I have to say yes. Got it.
Welcome, everybody. We are here doing another fun episode of Indie Reads Aloud with one of my favorite indie authors. I love this gentleman. He is so cool and so talented and so amazing. And oh my God, what a nice guy. Tadashi Moore is back with us again. Thank you so much for coming back, Ian.
I'm glad to be here.
I love it when you come on because it just transports me back into being 6 years old and listening to stories and I love your art and I'm just overwhelmed with your amazingness.
Well, this whole podcast is great for anybody who just wants a story, right?
That's kind of the goal.
Yep.
Working at it. So, for those of you who have not met Ian yet, Ian Tadashi Moore is a father, designer, musician, and artist from Southeast Michigan. He grew up talking to the bugs in the back lawn and plinking melodies on piano keys. He likes the sounds words make and will probably never act his age, but I think that's a good thing. He has written and illustrated 3 books, Zosan, which he's going to read for you today. Tamaishi, please tell me I said that right.
Tamaishi.
Tamaishi. I get it wrong every single time.
It's easy to miss.
This is one of the things about learning how to read the way you read with a hearing disability. They teach you how to sound out things differently.
Mm-hmm.
And where all the little things live. I love that story. With each book, he created a companion audiobook, a dream he had ever since he was a kid, getting lost listening to books on audio cassettes. I remember those days.
Yeah, I still have some.
Used to do that with my son in the car, books on tape. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard about dinosaurs dancing. I can't even begin to tell
There was
you.
a company, I think it was from San Francisco, called Jabberwocky, and they have obviously Alice in Wonderland, but they had a whole catalog of these things. I still have some of them. I still have the Alice in Wonderland one, which is great.
I remember when my son was little and he was getting the Scholastic book catalog from school. And the rule was you can pick books, but you had to also get the audiobook because at night it was mom reads 3 books at bedtime and then you pick an audio cassette to fall asleep to.
Yeah. What a great tradition.
And it was really fun because he got to not only share the gift of story with me, but then it kind of like subliminally got into his imagination, the cadence of storytelling and how we do that out loud. So it meant I only had to read 3 books at night.
Every parent has to have constraints.
Well, we have our limits after a day of, adulting and parenting. And then there comes a time when you just got to go, 6-year-old, go to sleep, please.
Shut the door.
So today you're going to read Zosan. Will you tell us a little bit about this story? This was the first book I discovered of yours, and I fell in love with this little elephant guy.
Actually, I brought it to your bookstore, didn't I?
Yeah. So can tell everybody who hasn't met Zosan yet what this story is about.
Well, first of all, it was sparked by a Japanese folk song by the same name, and it started out as just a picture book that would illustrate each of the stanzas, very short song. But somehow it ended up being, this chapter book that I wrote about a little elephant who starts to see beauty all around him in places he didn't expect, and his really fervent search for all of that around him, and his need to share that with everybody.
It's a really cool book, and the art in it is amazing.
What's really cool is it's just been revised.
That's very exciting. Yeah.
Originally, it was a Kickstarter project, and I raised money to get it printed in one color, black and white. But this year, I got it reprinted in not 1 but 6 colors. So there's 6 spot colors running in this on an offset press. And
so what you're telling me is I need to go out and update my nephew's library.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because, the color really does add some. Well, first of all, the theme of the book is sort of color. It's kind of implied, and it starts off very monochromatic. And as he finds more, the palette gets more sophisticated, and you even start blending colors together. And then when the mood gets a little uneasy and sad, it goes to dark purple, and then it changes back to warm colors.
How cool. Yeah, I definitely need to update the library and get another copy, not just for my nephew, but for myself.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
think
fundamentally, it's the
that's,
same story. I did rework a lot of the passages, though, because, you read something 7 years later, you go, I can revise that.
I can make that better. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're always doing that as artists, right?
Yes.
Whether it's with the art itself or with the words, we're always
Yep.
trying to improve on them.
Absolutely. I think it's a central part of the process.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's important. So I'm super excited to hear this, and I can't wait to share you with all of my podcast friends because I just adore your work so much. Please, when you're ready, take the microphone and read aloud.
I'm going to read from the first chapter. I don't know with this background if the pictures will show up, but I'll attempt to show them in the front. The first chapter is called The Whistler. Little Zoe lived with his mama and Papa Zoe, out where the bamboo reached for the sky. The wind wandered freely, and the grass was an endless green ocean. He loved his mama and Papa Zoe, and never wandered far. He squinted at the setting sun and wondered where it would go, tilted his head at the mountains and pondered where they came from, but never asked many questions. He was happy right where he was. One day while eating his breakfast, he heard a crunch, crunch, crunch come out of nowhere. He perked up his ears and listened. You see, elephants have large ears to match their noses, and he could hear even the faintest sound. It was getting louder. Peering down, he noticed a trail of little bugs following each other happily in a line. They didn't notice little Zoe standing there, even as big as he was next to them. They were so focused straight ahead, marching in a rhythmic, bouncy way. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Hello, little ones, whispered little Zoe, crouching down to get a closer look. See if I can make that work. There they are. He spoke quietly, because they were so small and he didn't want to startle them or hurt their ears. Where are you going? And one of them noticed little Zoe. Why, hello, he said, without missing a beat. Where are we going? We're not really sure, but we're going. Yahoo! I don't understand, replied little Zoe. What if you can't find your way back? What if you don't like where you're going? What if you get hurt or get hungry? What if it starts to rain? What if... And little Zoe's face wrinkled, the corner of his mouth reaching for his ears. Still marching, the bug raised his head and made a tiny, high-pitched foo-wee. The tiny crunch, crunch, crunch stopped. No, the only sound left was the breeze. The whistler pat the ground with his hand and looked up. So little Zoe carefully put his nose down and let him climb. Doesn't matter, said the whistler. We'll end up somewhere different and new, and that's all we care about. He threw his arms out and gazed around. That's the fun. You never know what you'll see or where you'll end up. Little Zoe stared at the bugs. Some were looking ahead, others were looking at him. Some peacefully stared at the horizon, while others fidgeted. And little Zoe stared cross-eyed at the whistler on his nose, speechless. The whistler sighed and slid down little Zoe's nose. Give it a try someday. You won't be disappointed. Little Zoe heard a faint tick, like two pebbles knocking together, and the crunch, crunch, crunch started again. The line of bugs disappeared in the distance over the grassy hill to the east, and little Zoe sat there pondering, listening to the faint of the bamboo leaves. I might have time for the next chapter, do you think? Okay. Second chapter, chapter 2, Finding Color. The next morning, little Zoe stared at the wide burning clouds cooling off, barely eating his breakfast. He found himself drifting away from Mama Zoe towards the horizon where the sun blossomed. By lunchtime, he couldn't hear Mama and Papa Zoe any longer, only the whispers of wind across the grass. He closed his eyes, twirled around a few times, peeking out just as he started to get dizzy. Well, looks like I'm going this way, he thought. Then another voice spoke up in his head. But you don't know where you're going. Little Zoe stopped in his tracks, wondering where the other voice came from. But there wasn't anyone else around, so he went on walking. And the grassy plain turned into a gathering of tall trees, beautifully bristly bushes, and long leaves that waved hello. He stomped over fallen limbs and carefully tiptoed over small creatures on the forest floor. There were greenish-blue mosses under his feet that tickled and vines that hugged the trees. He came across a pillowy puff on the ground, standing in the great green grass like a silent and sturdy tree trunk. He wasn't sure what to do. Should he go around it? It was maybe too tall to step over, or he could just turn and go back. But without realizing, he nudged it with his foot. A thick mustard-colored cloud burst into the air, and for a few moments he couldn't see much of anything at all. He sneezed and coughed and stumbled about trying to find his way, wiping fuzz off his face and eyes with his trunk. The cloud cleared, and he found himself face to face with something even more spectacular. It wasn't like everything else in the green. Soft leaves and tiny tendrils swirled out from the center as it bobbed in the shape of a figure 8. And it couldn't quite make up its mind what color it wanted to be. First a deep shade of purple, a shiny turquoise, a brilliant orange, or a deep vermilion red, depending on how he tilted his head. He reached up and gently pulled it from its perch, and it ended up in his trunk. Mama will love this, he thought to himself as he smiled 3 different ways. Are there more of these? Only he didn't wait to find out, leaping out of the forest with his new discovery. Little Zoe beamed as bright as the sunshine that greeted him, running faster than he ever thought he could. Stepping into the soft meadow grass, he searched for Mama Zoe. She was a tiny dot on the edge of the sky. With every step there was something new to notice. The way the grass moved as he flew past, how the wind rumbled in his flapping ears, and how the tree shades sprawled across the ground, looking like shadowy monsters. He reached Mama Zoe out of breath and full of sparks, eager to show her the new colorful thing. It was this color and that, and when I put it in the sun, it looked like the whole rainbow. Mama Zoe smiled and put her trunk on little Zoe's head. Oh, and you brought it back to share with me? Well, that's sweet of you. Are there more of them? Wondered little Zoe aloud. Do you think they're all different? Where do they hide? No wonder those bugs like to wander. Mama Zoe did not ask about the bugs. She watched him do a double bat kick, almost flipping over. Little Zoe caught himself and peered over his shoulder with narrowed eyes. You can keep this color, Mama. I'll find you some more. Mama Zoe began to speak, but she blinked, and he was gone, bounding over the verdant waves.
I love it when you read out loud to me. It's so wonderfully soothing, and my imagination just completely takes over. So there are 2 things that I've always wanted to ask you. The first is, when most children's books focus on the big and the bold and the over the top exciting things, we see lots of children's books about circuses and about grand adventures and about space travel, and
Oh, sure.
your stories focus on the little tiny pieces of life that so often children's books omit. Why did you decide to go that direction? Is it because there aren't enough books written about the little things, or is there something else that draws you to them?
I think it's something else. I mean, I certainly didn't think about it from that angle. I just know seeing the joy in the little things in general, I think is a very heartwarming habit, if you will. Pausing just to see. I mean, I still do that now. Yesterday, Elliot told me, I love the sunrise in the morning while we're walking to the bus. I mean, so it's clearly emanating from me in some way, that just to appreciate these things that are around you, right? That's where it comes from, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other, when my son was little, he noticed all the little tiny bugs, and he was constantly turning over stones and looking under them. And so the other thing I've noticed about your writing that I tend to notice, because I have a hearing disability, is you use a lot of really unique sound words.
Yes.
Does that come naturally to you, or do you really focus on doing that?
No, well, I guess you could say a little bit of both, but I definitely pay attention to that. Like the way these, you have to read these things out loud. And when I do, I go, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't feel fun. It doesn't set the mood with just the pace and the timbre and the way the syllables run together, even just outside of what it means. It's meaningful for me to have it be fun when you hear it.
I love that
I
you
want to
use
say,
different sensorial vocabulary,
yeah,
right? It's not just sharp, or strong or bright. You find all these other little, it's almost like you write with a thesaurus next to you all the time.
well, sometimes I do.
But I just love that about it, because it shows us, for me, sound especially, in a way that normally I don't get to hear it.
I mean, when you think about it, all the words we say are just sounds we're making and that we're used to. And so we're shaping them as writers and as poets and stuff like that. I wanted to say something too about little kids when you said your son. Um, we forget, I think a lot of us forget as adults. That's sort of the message to adults in here too, is
Mhm.
that kids see the world very differently. They do notice the bugs. Not only are they physically lower to the ground, etc., but they're just in a different world down there. And we forget that when we grow tall and start looking towards, I don't know, other things. So,
Yeah. I remember long before my son was old enough to read Tolkien on his own,
mm,
I found him 3 years old out in the back playing with mud and sticks. And I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm mixing potions." And I thought, okay, oh, to be 3 years old again,
I know.
right?
Yeah. How can you hold on to that? I mean, I think if there, maybe an indirect, but it ended up being a deliberate effort with the other two books is to try and sort of recapture that and
So what do
have,
you have coming next?
well, I'm working on an idea for another book about Raquel Raccoon, but I haven't gotten much
Ooh,
further than that.
very fun.
A very inventive anthropomorphic raccoon who I don't know what she's going to do there, but um, also working on an illustration for a magazine about haiku, trash panda haiku.
Trash Panda haiku. Okay, that could be fun.
Yeah, she puts raccoons on every cover, so she asked me to do one, so I'm working on that
Very
too.
fun. Oh my gosh, how fantastic. Ian, thank you so much for coming back and reading to me. I
Oh,
really
thank you.
appreciate it. And I have to go get the new version of the book now.
It's here. I'm here.
Thank you so much. I hope you have a great day.
You too.